I want to talk to you about healthcare and what has smell got to do with healthcare. This is a map that was developed by researchers at the Washington State University. Their goal was to capture a simple measure, to come up with a number that typifies what the global healthcare access looks like for every person on this planet. And if you look carefully at that map, you will notice that there are some areas where the healthcare quality is less than 31, for instance. So that means the access of people that live in these regions is less than 31. Whereas people that are over 91, for instance, they have access to good health care. In a separate, unrelated report, every year, the United Nations releases what they call the World Happiness Report, where they go to countries and they ask individuals on how they rate their own quality of life. It's very striking, the correlation that exists between these two different research bodies. That the people that reported a higher happiness index seems to have access to better quality health care. As a scientist, at least in my former life, I understand that correlation is not causation. But in this case, it is eerily close. Yes, I understand it's a very Silicon Valley thing to say, that our company is in the business of creating happiness for people to have, but we actually have qualitative data that when people have access to healthcare, they have a good chance of pursuing their own happiness. So the question becomes, how can we scale the level of healthcare that somebody has in Sweden? How can we scale that to China? Or how can we scale it to Indonesia? Hell, how can we scale it to Africa or South America? In another study published by The Lancet, they were able to show that for us to do that kind of scale-up, in China, for instance, you will need to increase the cost of healthcare by nearly 700%. In Bangladesh, nearly 200% in terms of cost. To look a little bit into the detail, where does this money go? At least in the US, the numbers is 40 cents of every dollar goes to the hospital, and 24 cents of every dollar goes to the physicians. There is no serious healthcare solution that does not tackle these two problems can be considered viable. So the question is, how can we prevent this, people waiting in the emergency room for so long, turning into this? We have a radical view of this. And that radical view is this: healthcare is a data quality problem. I repeat, healthcare is a data quality problem. You will see what I mean in a second. Ping An, one of the largest insurers in China, also recognizes this problem. What Ping An has done is develop an app called the Good Doctor app, where they have more than 200 million people on this app. Less than 8 years ago, this app did not exist. But for somebody in China, they have to wait 3 hours to see a doctor for just 8 minutes. And the folks at Ping An recognize that there is no way they can match the healthcare with the people in that country without enabling an AI platform that works through the mobile phone in gathering data about the people and giving a solution. But yet, this is incomplete. What if you had a solution where you are able to essentially collapse all the tools that you find in a doctor's office in Sweden or in Switzerland? What if you're able to collapse all of that into a single tool? I want to introduce the technology we are working on, and we call it Health by Breath. What does this mean? It means that every minute from your breath, you emit from 2,000 to 3,000 different volatile organic compounds from your lungs. These compounds give us information about the state of your heart, the state of your liver, the state of your small intestines, and other tissues in your body. In fact, to diagnose liver cirrhosis, you will need about 11 VOCs to do that. For lung cancer, for instance, you would need only 13 volatile organic compounds. So of these 2,000 different volatile organic compounds coming from your breath, you would need to just find 13 of them that give you an indication that you have lung cancer. 6 of the most common bacteria that cause infections in the hospital, you can detect them with just 4 volatile organic compounds. This is not data from our company. This is data that is publicly available. In fact, you can go further. For pneumonia, you need 12 VOCs. For diabetes, you need just 3 VOCs. If it's so easy, why is it that no one has ever done this? That is because to detect smell is very, very hard. But turns out there is a tool that is currently used in this. So in the UK, for instance, you have these medical detection dogs that can essentially detect VOCs related to cancer. In fact, recently in the UK, there was a woman that was reported to being able to smell Parkinson's. So what we have done at Koniku is essentially to combine the technology that the dog has and combine it with a chip. But before we get to that, let me quickly explain to you how the dog's olfaction works. And also your olfaction, by the way. As you're sitting in this room, the smell of this room is essentially coming to you through particles. So particles in the air. In the case of the dog, these particles go into the dog's nose. They bind to what you call olfactory sensory neurons. And these brain cells in the nose of the dog, they generate electrical signals that transfer to the brain of the dog to tell the dog essentially what it's smelling. What we have done is essentially co-opt the technology that has existed in the pharma industry for the last 4 decades. We take a biological cell, we genetically modify it. So this is a brain cell, an astrocyte, or even a HEK cell. We genetically modify these cells to express olfactory receptors. So the same sensors that work in the nose of the dog, in our case is the nose of a mouse, but nobody knows that a mouse actually can smell so good. So we use the dog as the example. But in our case, we take the sensors in the nose of a mouse, we genetically modify how the cell itself functions, and we combine it with a chip. So here, to quickly show you an example of one of our biggest applications at the moment, which is explosive detection. On the left-hand side, we have the natural existing cells, and on the right side, there's the cells which we have genetically modified. In your case, it's opposite. So when the TATP comes on, you see that was when the explosive was applied. Let's play that again. So on your left-hand side, you have the cells that we have genetically modified so that when you see that TATP flash in front of your screen, that was when the explosive was applied to the cell. Not only are we able to get the cell to respond, but we are able to get them to respond at a very, very fast pace. Right? So these are cells that have been genetically modified to detect explosive compounds in this case. If we can detect explosive compounds with it, we can detect essentially anything with it. In fact, our goal is to map all the volatile organic compounds that touch human lives. So I don't know how many of you use Google Maps today. The same way you can pinpoint that you're going to a location X and Google Maps takes you there, we want to be able to map volatile organic compounds on a planet scale. So I'm going to play a video of a demo of my team testing this device.
You also quickly review the other soldering techniques, because you might have to do it at some point in your life.
So currently, we have the capacity to produce about 50 of these devices. It's the size of about half the footprint of a smartphone. It has a microfluidic framework in it, and all of what you've seen now is essentially powered by a small smartphone battery. It has a Wi-Fi chip in it, which means you can remotely connect to it, and you can remotely sense any chemical compound, so any VOC that you're interested in, wherever you want. So essentially, what we have been able to do is to solve the smell problem using the device that usually you do with a spectrometer that is the size of a lab table or the size of a small fridge. We have been able to reduce the size of this device. Using synthetic biology, we've been able to reduce it to the size of half of a smartphone. We're going after a diagnostic market that is more than $390 billion market potential. Of course, we're not the only ones doing this. There are other companies that are doing this. So one of my favorite companies that is actually doing this as well is Alstom Medical. They're using a different technology stack. They are not using synthetic biology. So they're using what you call an ion transport technology. It's called FIMES. They recently started their clinical trials in January of this year in Cambridge in the UK. And their goal is essentially the same, to detect volatile organic compounds from breath to detect cancer. So you're probably thinking by now, how much does this device cost? As a kid that grew up in Nigeria, I would like this device to be available to everyone on this planet, no matter where you come from. In terms of a base device cost, we are looking to target the price that is less than $60 to produce one. Now, how much we sell one is, of course, a market decision. The device comes with consumables that you can stick into it. So these are living cells. They have a defined lifespan. So it has a printer and an ink cartridge model that you can change this device on a monthly basis, on a 6-monthly basis. Our goal is that if you can afford a smartphone on this planet, or if you can buy a smartphone, you should be able to have one of these devices. It's important to know that today, while we have been able to digitize a lot of things, especially vision and sound, this volatile organic compound spectra is something that seems to be completely missing. So we have succeeded in digitizing sound. We have succeeded in being able to digitize vision. And those two markets together, they're nearly a $2 trillion market. But smell It goes beyond healthcare. It goes into the food you eat. So the food you eat, the coffee you drink, the lunch you're going to have, the entire taste is determined by the volatile organic compounds you interact with. Essentially, the food you eat, the user interface is volatile organic compounds. Imagine if you could digitize that. You could imagine creating a Mars bar that is 0 calories, if you can digitize it first. For the travel space, some of our biggest customers are actually in this country. For the healthcare space, I've already talked about. And for the consumer packaged goods, I would talk about some of our customers. So with P&G, for instance, we were able to help them to develop a technology where you can go into the bathroom. Instead of smelling the chemical in the bathroom smells of nothing. You'll be surprised that that is a $500 million market. ExxonMobil, for instance, we're helping them detect carcinogens in their oil facilities, so BTEX. BASF, we're helping them develop the next generation of plant pest control. Instead of having a solution where when one plant is infected, you take a small aeroplane and you fly it over an entire region and you spray everything with chemicals. When plants are under attack, they give off specific VOCs. If you combine this with your tractors, for instance, you can exactly pinpoint which plant is under stress. And you can deal exactly with that, so that all your food doesn't have to have chemicals in it. With Walliness and Williamson, for instance, we are helping them control the flow of invasive species, so stink bug, that goes along with the transportation, the cargo, that goes to Australia, for instance, and ravages entire farmlands. As the name suggests, it's a stink bug. It produces volatile organic compounds. We want to help them detect that before it gets to location. And of course, we work with a lot of defense people, as you can imagine. Unfortunately, I can't talk about them. So our total addressable market, I believe, is about $250 billion. And where are we today? Like I told you, we are capable of producing 50 of these devices today. Our goal is that by the end of next year, we are producing 10,000 of these devices per month. And we're gradually working towards that. The panel earlier was talking about startups and profitability and what have you. I grew up in a very frugal environment. One of the things I said for my team is that we must be very profitable from day one. Till date, we have done revenues and contracts that have exceeded $17.5 million in joint development contract with some of our development partners and also some of the firms that we work with. My team is mostly composed of PhD scientists and engineers. And we have been at this for about 4 years now. I have worked on this technology myself for the last 17 years. We recently signed a partnership with the Fraunhofer Institute in Germany for scaling up our manufacturing, just helping us build out that manufacturing base. And I couldn't be more proud to be working with these guys, the Fraunhofer Institute. These are some of our investors. You will recognize some of them are actually local. So Changi Airport is an investor in us, for instance. And we came out of IndieBio, based in San Francisco. I want to leave you with one thought. Our company's mission is not to sell people happiness. Our company's goal is to give them a damn good chance at getting it. Thank you.